and welcome to the Wonder and Whimsy podcast. I'm Kimberly, and this is.
Carlee Soder.
And today we are
Hey.
discussing the philosophy of love. We're going to be reading a couple quotes and a couple song lyrics and talking about what love means according to these artists.
Yeah.
So we're going to be starting with one quote. So this one is by Erich Fromm. Love isn't just something natural. It requires discipline, concentration, patience, faith, and the overcoming of narcissism. It isn't a feeling, it is a practice. So, what do you think about this quote?
For me, it really resonates for me because I think for when you're like in love in a relationship, it requires a very grand amount of self-awareness and self-confrontation
Mhm.
to really work on the things that are hard because it's not always like amazing. Sometimes there are days where it's like, okay, I'm being really tested right now, and I need to remind myself to answer with kindness and so that my partner doesn't feel like I'm being awful or angry at them for no particular reason, but also like still being kind instead of being mean. And it's a practice. Like for me, it's a huge practice. Like yes, there's the internal feeling of like, oh, I'm in love, but if I don't continuously practice like observing my love, how I'm contributing to my romantic life, then it kind of just falls off the wagon wheel. And it's like, oh, whoa, I haven't been paying attention. And now I have all these things that I have to clean up. So that's kind of where I sit with this quote a lot. I don't know how you're feeling about it.
I really like it. I think that in the West, many people, the average American, often feels we talk about love as if it's a feeling, as if it's something that happens to us, right? Especially romantic love, like, oh, I fell in love, like I couldn't control it. But I like this idea of looking at love as a practice, a verb, something you choose to do that requires a conscious effort. Now, that doesn't sound as like romantic as this fairy tale kind of Disney movie sort of love, but I think it's realistic. I think lasting love requires effort. And I love looking at it as a practice rather than just something you feel. And I think the this idea of overcoming narcissism, which Fromm talks about a lot in the book he wrote, is a big part of it. Overcoming self-centeredness, and I always feel like love requires a little bit of compromise and self-sacrifice. In his book, he talks a lot about lasting love requiring this idea of overcoming narcissism, discipline, concentration, patience, faith, and how love isn't exactly natural. It's not just this instinctive force. I mean, it might it might start from an instinctive force, but it requires effort. So I really appreciate this quote. I think a lot of people can relate to it. Um, are you familiar with this old saying that I'm sure you've heard it before? Love, I love you because I need you is immature love. But to say, I need you because I love you is mature love. Have you heard that before?
I have heard that before.
Yeah.
And I think it like really defines like the difference between like adolescent love and a mature adult love. And you can still be an adult and still feel kind of like the opposite, the first option, right? Where I need you because I love you versus I love you, so I need you. I even if you're looking at this from a perspective of like this quote in terms of like if we weren't looking at it as romantic relationship with another person, if we were looking at our romantic relationship even with ourselves, it is still a really grand practice. Like there's a lot of days if you're like me, like looking in the mirror and trying to remind yourself there's so many beautiful things about you, both internal and external. And there's a lot of things that happen in our day to day that take us away from how much we even love ourselves, and having to remind ourselves at the end of the day, like, I have a ton of love for myself, and there are great qualities about me, even on your worst days. And when you're working through something that you're like, I want to change this about myself because it'll make me better, but I still love who this current self is. So I think even with self love, it, like the quote from Fromm, doesn't just only pertain to a romantic relationship that you may have with somebody else. It could even be a relationship that you have with a friend,
Hmm.
right? Because if you don't keep, what's the word that I want to use? Not, if you don't keep on the track of caring and tending to any relationship, whether it's romantic, a friendship, with yourself, you lose track, and then you're just, your train's falling off, and then you're trying to push it back up onto the tracks, and there's mud everywhere, and it's really messy, and it can take a while to get right back on that track of like, this is my practice of staying with who I am, who I love, and making sure that everybody always feels the encompassing amount of like my faith in our, in each other, or within myself, or with my friends.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful analogy too about getting on track, right? And from you mentioned something about self-love and how important that is, and I think one of the beautiful things about this quote is that it can apply to all forms of love. Love between friends, love between a family member, or just self-love. And Fromm is a huge advocate of loving yourself before you can love anyone else fully. Because if we can treat ourselves with the same amount of love we can treat someone else, that's what's going to make the relationship even better. So I think you're right on the nose with what Fromm intended with the quote. Uh, and Yeah, I feel like this is something that I have to remind myself of oftentimes when I've been in relationships and there are moments of struggle, right? Where
Mhm.
because when you enter a relationship, even if it's a friendship, when you have an agreement, okay, we're friends, sometimes that starts that makes you feel like, okay, now there's some expectation. So now I expect certain things from my friend because my friend says, oh, he loves me or she loves me. So now I have this expectation. Well, are they going to reciprocate everything that I do, kind of thing? Because a true friend to me means X, Y, and Z. So, so I feel like if we let go of expectations in regards to the other person and put less attention on the other person and more attention on ourselves as far as loving ourselves through the difficult times and loving the other person even when they don't meet our expectations, loving them when they do something that we don't understand or do something that we don't agree with, choosing to love them. It takes more of an effort. It's not as easy, obviously. So I
Mhm.
think this is a great reminder to us in those times, whether we're struggling with like a friendship or a relationship, that this is normal. It's, fairy tale love isn't necessarily natural. It's normal that love requires an effort. It requires some sacrifice. It requires some compromise. And I think the healthiest relationships are probably the most challenging ones because those relationships can teach us the most about ourselves and can help us grow. So I think the more challenging the relationship is, the more we can grow from it. Maybe not in every example, but does that make sense?
That does make sense. That makes me think about like my partner and I, and like the way the last like, geez, even like month of our time together, of how I've been challenged to, in conflict, find different ways to communicate that best support both of us, right? Because he recently like pointed out a way that I apologize that like yes, and for me has always been supportive for me, but somebody else doesn't always respond the exact same way. So it takes a lot of effort and be like, well, what I'm doing isn't wrong, but it may not be communicable to other people.
Hmm.
And each person, if I'm gonna like keep stoking the fire of this love and keep it with me for a long time, for I hope my whole life, I need to put the effort to find those other tools. Because just because I have tools that are well received for me doesn't mean that everybody else responds to those same tools and that they have their own little toolbox of things that they work better with. So it's like, okay, I can introduce that to my toolbox and I'll also have that in addition to what I already do. You mentioned friendships, and I was thinking back on this of having friends in like moments where, like, yeah, you have to do internal work of like, why do I feel like this friendship isn't always working for me? And at times it's because sometimes we're distracted by life, which is pretty normal, like where we get caught up in like our work, our day jobs, the things that are taking all of our time. And we only have so much time, like real estate of time, to spend on everything that we want to spend it on. And sometimes it means maybe your friendships don't get a lot of your attention. And that was one of the things is like growing into adulthood, learning how to maintain friendships as an adult and being like, okay, I need to take a little bit of the expectations off. It doesn't mean that they don't care about me. It's just that we both have a lot of time that we have to spend on other things, and we don't always have the right amount of time that we desire to spend on our relationship. But it doesn't mean that when we do get time to spend with each other, it never feels like we missed a step, right? Like it's especially those friendships that have been really true to you. It's like, oh, great, I'm talking to my girl now. Like I haven't seen you in 2 months, but like now's our time and our space, and it feels like nothing was missed.
Hmm.
And those are relationships that like growing over time has been a big workaround for me of being like, oh, I'm not going to be able to see those people all the time, and asking myself like, why do I feel upset about maybe not getting replies all the time? And then it's like confrontation, right? And self-awareness of like, oh, when I'm really stressed out from work, do I always answer my phone? I don't. And it may be 3, 4 days before I get around to being like, hey, so sorry I couldn't catch up with you. I was swimming through it. um,
Hmm.
and here I am now, and I can give you all the attention that I wish I could have given you a few days ago or even a few weeks ago. And it's extra discipline of like things in life change in significant ways that we don't have a lot of control over.
I love what you said about letting go of expectation. And I completely understand what you mean about getting older and entering adulthood and figuring out how to manage your time in a way. And I completely, I completely align with that because the older I get, the more jobs I take on, the more creative projects I involve myself with. And I often feel like it's hard for me to make time for friends that I've had, when I was younger that aren't necessarily on the same path as I am. But then when we do make time for each other, it feels like nothing's changed. So time management is really important. It's like a practical thing that's really important for any loving relationship. It's not like a very romantic thing, I wish that I wish that I could just be spontaneous with my romantic partner every once in a while and just spontaneously like do something we didn't plan. But nowadays it's like we have to plan our date
Mhm.
nights in advance. Like we
Yep.
have to plan quality time in advance. When I was younger, it was a lot easier just to be spontaneous. So that goes back to this concept of, the difference between mature love and immature love. You have to learn how to love in different ways. when your lifestyle changes. So that applies to any type of relationship. So that's a really great point. Um, well, cool. Do you want to move on to our next piece and see what he
Yeah,
has to say about
do
love?
it.
So you picked out this song. So I've never heard this song before. I've never read these lyrics. So you tell me what you think about it. And yeah, if you want to read the lyrics.
So, let me pull up the lyrics. I have only heard this song twice.
Okay.
And very, 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 very recently. Um, there we go. Ella Fitzgerald. So the song that I chose was It's a Lovely Day by Ella Fitzgerald. And you have to listen to it eventually if we're like if anybody's whoever's listening to this, I highly suggest like go listen to it.
Yeah.
It I don't know what it was, but it was just one of those random days that I was with my partner and he turned it on. He used to play saxophone for like many, many, many years. And so he always has like lovely songs that he like knows of and he like popped it on. And it was one of my like favorite romantic moments where we were just dancing in the kitchen while cooking dinner, listening to the song. And when I heard it, I was like, oh, this is like the sound of his heart for me.
Oh,
And and I was like, wow, I'm like with a lot of confidence think this is the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And it just like it encapsulates like one of the most this song essentially from when I've heard it, it just feels like it's the best day ever and it's wildly romantic to me and I'm like every time I hear it I'm like this is what I want to like play for my first dance whenever I get married because this just
wow.
like it holds my heart and it yeah so the lyrics it says, it's a lovely day today. So whatever you've got to do, you've got a lovely day to do it in. That's true. And I hope whatever you've got to do is something that can be done by two, for I'd really like to stay. It's a lovely day today, and whatever you've got to do, I'd be so happy to be doing it with you. But if you've got something that must be done, and it can only be done by one, there is nothing more to say, except it's a lovely day for saying it's a lovely day. It's a
Okay.
lovely day today, and whatever I've got to do, I've got a lovely day to do it in. That's true. But perhaps whatever I've got to do is something that can be done by two. If it is, then you could stay. It's a lovely day today. So it to me, whenever I hear this song, it's like the day is already great, and it's just amplified by having that person with you in addition. But even when they're away, it's still a lovely day because you have that person's heart with you. So every time it just makes me cry a little bit when I hear this song every time.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those lyrics. I can't wait to actually listen to the song now, because I'm sure the music is just amplifies and enhances the meaning. So I'll definitely check out the song. But I love the lyrics. It makes you think about like even when you're having a really bad day and things aren't going your way, if you have love in your life, it can still be considered a lovely day. So it's really sweet. It's really touching. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, and it's got a wonderful jazzy sound to it. So just like it feels sensual, I would almost say, to your heart, where you're like, ooh, okay.
Yeah. I love those songs that give you the warm, fuzzy feelings.
hmm
And I love jazz. Jazz is probably one of my favorite genres of music. So cool.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll definitely check that out. Thank you for sharing. So there's
You're
one more
welcome.
quote here that we're going to kind of read and analyze as we discuss the philosophy of love. So this one is by Bertrand Russell. To fear love is to fear life, and those who fear life are already three parts dead. Thoughts?
When I read this, I started to think a little bit back on my time away from dating. It was very intentional, but But it also made me think of like several friends that I have that are struggling in the dating world, and some that have just been like, not for me, not doing it anymore. I give up. And it is really, really hard when you've been like dating people and then it just continuously keeps not working out. It's hard to keep pulling yourself up and being like, that's what I want, and I'm going to keep going at it, because rejection is incredibly difficult to move through. And especially if it happens like consistently. I think for about like 5, 6 years, I kept running into relationships that were like, now when I look back on, I'm like, they were very purposeful in my life, for teaching me things that I didn't yet know about myself, that I needed to learn in new ways or under different perspectives, different lights, so that I could fully feel the lesson. And there's also like a phrase that I'm probably gonna misspeak on, but it was like, if you keep running into the same people until you learn the lesson that you're meant to learn. It's something like that. And for some of my friends that have spoken to me about how they like don't really want to date, and a lot of it comes out of fear, because it is incredibly hard to consistently experience rejection. Or even if you've been in a long-term relationship and something falls apart towards the end of it, of having to move through that, and that it takes a ton of courage, and fear can sometimes step in the way of that. But it also means that you miss out a lot on, to me, a lot of great things that can happen in your life if you only have just a little bit more courage to try and try again.
Mhm.
I would like to know what you feel about he means by 3 parts dead, because I've been trying to figure out that part.
Well, to me, that part just means he's saying that if you aren't willing to take a risk on love, if you're allowing fear to win, whether that's fear of rejection, fear of failing, whatever that fear stems from, if you're letting that win, then you're missing out on 2/3 of life. So he's sort of equating fear with death. Fear is essentially the death of life because life is love. To me, he's sort of equating life with love, as if love is the thing that brings meaning to life, whether that be love between each other or just a love for life, to have a passion in life. He's just sort of equating fear is death. So if you're so afraid that you're not going to take a chance on love, then you're going to miss out on what matters in life. So you're only going to be living basically like a third of a full life.
I think you bring up a good point about like love meaning, love for life, even.
Hmm.
Of, if you weren't even to think about this in a romantic sense, of having a passion, that maybe you feel strongly about. For you and I, we both are actors, and we have that passion. And I've thought like on dark days where I'm just like, where is my career going? Like, how do I keep going down this? The thought of not pulling myself up by the bootstraps and going at it again makes me feel like I'm dying. Like I feel physically ill. And I'm like, I can't give up that part of my heart. My heart loves doing that, and my heart deserves to experience that no matter what it looks like, because I'll still find fulfillment in partaking in that passion.
Hmm.
And for some people, maybe it is like them saying goodbye to a passion of theirs, and they feel a small death inside.
Hmm.
Because I have had actor friends in the past who have said goodbye to it, but later down the road have found a way to go back to acting. Maybe it's local theater, and not pursuing it under the craziness that is pursuing it professionally, for film and television, or on large stages on Broadway, and revisiting like, what is that passion, and like, can you really say goodbye to it? So I think you made a good point. I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah, a passion, a love for life. And that could be anything. That could be your love for reading all the time and like being a major bookworm and going to meet authors that you're like, I have your book and I've had the first edition and please sign it. Like, I would love if you signed it for me.
Yeah.
So it can mean so much more than just a romantic love of life.
Yeah. I like the idea that love is vital to life, that without love, your life is not even fully there. And I love what you said about acting and how this quote can really be beneficial to share with our actor friends whenever they're discouraged. And I know you relate to this. If you have a passion for the craft of storytelling, then you're always going to feel that love no matter the outcome of a situation. So, no matter the outcome of an audition, if you're actually enjoying and loving the process, the chance to perform, the chance to create a character, the chance to tell a story, whether you make a movie and it isn't well received or not, if you really find love in the process, then you're going to be living life to its fullest, not just a third, but all, So I think it's important just to find, even if you don't find someone that you love necessarily, but something in life that you love. And usually the things in life that we love are related to our love for people, are related to our love for other human beings or of other living beings, right? Because love doesn't just exist between human beings. Love exists between all beings. So I just think he's saying here that love is a vital necessity to live a meaningful life. And without it, life becomes hollow and empty and bland. So I agree. I
True.
definitely agree with this quote. And it is hard, though. It is hard when you've been disappointed. And if you're disappointed in your craft and your passion and the thing that you love to do, when that becomes disappointing, you have to remind yourself of why. Why do you love this thing? Why do
Mhm.
you love this person? And when you remember why, um, that's all that really matters to have a joyful experience with it. So, yeah, it's a great quote. Bertrand Russell, I love a lot of his philosophies. I really enjoy his ideas a lot. They remind me of some existentialist ideas like Jean-Paul
Mhm.
Sartre and Kierkegaard. Embracing uncertainty and risk is necessary to
Mhm.
live an authentic life. If we don't embrace uncertainty, if we don't take risks, we're missing out on so much, right? So, anyway, yeah,
Yeah, I agree with
big
you
quote.
100% on that.
Yeah, I could talk about this stuff forever. So, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and sharing your song. Any other thoughts you want to share before we part ways?
Um, Keep loving on.
Yes. Keep loving on. Keep giving love a chance, I would say.
Yes.
Keep giving love a chance. Don't give up on
Hmm.
love. Don't give up on
No.
the people you love, and don't give up on what you love to do. So,
Exactly that.
well, Carlee, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Maybe we can do
Thank you
this
for
again
having me.
sometime. And yeah, take care, everyone. Let us know your thoughts. If you're listening from home, let us know what you think about love. Let us know if you agree or disagree with us. I'd be happy to have you join the conversation. And in the meantime, keep wondering, stay curious about life. And yeah, I guess we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.